Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, not what you don't.
You need and not what you don't. Yeah, that sounds good.
Good morning.
This is going to be another one of those.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Yeah. Tony Caravan with you for another edition of Tony Caravan Live in the morning. We've got our Diet Thunder Cola in the morning show mug today. I've been granted a seat on the space station. So anyway, let's get into it. Did anyone else, as a couple of things, as usual, for those people who don't watch the show on a regular basis, this is my morning madness, morning personal madness that we tend to get into. So bear with me. Today, we're supposed to have a lot of rain outside. But has anyone else gotten one of these things? I'll turn that rain down a little bit. Your second economic impact payment. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Without getting into detail. What you need to know. Now, this is dated March 19th, 2021. U.S. Department of Treasury issued you a second economic impact payment as provided by the COVID-related Tax Relief Act of 2020. An EIP-2 payment in the amount of $600 was issued by direct deposit. Now, I did get $600 last year. So either they're so inept at the Department of Revenue, anytime someone gets anything that has that on it, in the mail, if you can see, get it in a focus. Internal Revenue Service, that's something to be a little bit concerned about. So are they either like 6 months late issuing that thing, or are we getting another $600? Were we supposed to get $2,000, not $1,400? Don't know. Got another one of these things yesterday. Card services, where through the envelope it clearly shows the MasterCard symbol, says card services, has a thick, card-like thing on there, right? So that some moron might actually think, to steal this. But like I've said before, this is the classic $500 limit. And 29.9% interest. Of course, you have to pay them $125 in the first year. So you hit the ground running, as I've said before, owing them money. But what's messed up about this whole thing, and I just bring this up in passing, your personal invitation number is on there. Your name, your address. Okay. So, I mean, I just tear these things up, but if some moron wants to sift through the garbage, they can't. My back has been like a little bit stiff. Hopefully I'm not experiencing a heart attack. I say the darndest things on this show. I got up at 3 a.m. It's 4:24 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the Mid-Atlantic states. That's the sound of me pouring some caffeine cola into my morning show mug. This is like the early show again. And it's, yeah, I kind of look like I'm, I don't know, round-faced, whatever. It is the 31st of March, so it's the last day of March. And according to the weather, the actual live weather, it's 57 degrees outside. And today, though the high today was predicted, it's supposed to rain, the high is predicted to be only 58 and the overnight about 30. Now they've updated, this is the scary part, and I'm going to jot this down. See, I always try to tell you that guys like me who track the weather, the average person just doesn't do that. Today it's supposed to be 59. Today is a Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. So it's going to be 30 in the overnight. Tomorrow we're expecting snow, a high of 34 degrees and an overnight of 19 degrees. And then the following day, Friday, will be sunny, 37 with a high of 25 degrees. And I hold this up because of the limitations of the YouTube interface. They should be able to just automatically have this thing appear here. I should just be able to do that. So YouTube algorithms, monitors, whatever, why don't you just add a little button to that thing to say insert picture in picture? But this was what I was trying to get into. I talked a little bit, whenever I talk about the climate and things of that nature, the people that have those protest signs and are always, scaring, trying to scare people to death, they don't do this. Like, they're not really judging and monitoring, what's happened year over year, day to day, making adjustments, because it's the farmer and it's the gardener who's out there all the time. To make a long story longer, man, I'm shaking in my boots because of if you look at Thursday and Friday. 33 degrees, snow, and the overnight 19, and Friday 38 and the overnight 25. And it's going to start tonight at 30. So we're talking about, that's a prolonged period of cold. Now, we've had sun and things like that recently. I don't know how this hat's like kind of curved or something. It looks like my head is, well, anyway. Tribute to Louis Armstrong, the white handkerchief. Almost white. My voice isn't as deep as it was yesterday. I noticed there were only a few times where we had a couple of clicks. So I don't know what's going on today. This microphone here is rather costly and expensive. I should be able to talk right into the darn thing, but I keep it at a distance because I've been having problems. I'm also starting to wonder if it's my face that's scaring people away. I don't know. Yeah.
So you found us.
What is it trying to tell us?
No strings, no catch. You own everything.
Now stay tuned to Rock Flux.
Rock Flux is the channel that this station on YouTube. But I also, as I've mentioned before, these videos can be found, links to them can be found on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Minds, Gab, various places. I've been negligent I had been putting some on BitChute, uploading separate ones there. In the aggregate, there tends to be I'm still lucky if I get a couple thousand views overall. YouTube, for some reason, however, they're choking or throttling me. So the numbers they show are always like 5 views, 12 views. It just, like I said, it goes, as somebody who studied probability and statistics, it goes against, the laws of probability and statistics, with a billion people on YouTube, or at least hundreds of millions, tens of millions at any given time, worldwide, globally, to have an actual live, whatever you will call it, column, row, on their site, that the idea that you would just get a curiosity seeker to pop on, pop out, is obvious. And I've never seen anyone else get, I've had songs up there that got no views. How could you get no views? I mean, it doesn't even give people. I'm sorry for moving around. I have an uncomfortable chair and my back it feels weird. I don't know what I did. Ugh. You can see how the distortion is here. Look at my head. It looks as if, it's so weird. All right. Is that unprofessional? Yeah, it is. Very unprofessional.
Brilliant!
But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
Let's get this show on the road.
All right. This is a semi-serious, title card. It has the picture of a gas mask. It's actually an insert I got when I had purchased these Israeli gas masks back in the 90s. And I bought a couple of them, and I had an extra pack of, filters, right? And, everyone said, well, if you're going to buy a gas mask, get the Israeli gas mask. That's the best. And I held on to them for a few years, but when I was moving, I sold them, and I was surprised how quickly they sold on eBay. Like that. I probably could have charged triple, quadruple the price. Now, unbeknownst to me, I wish I actually had that box of filters and the two Israeli gas masks, and probably trying to buy them today would be a fortune. And to find, the authentic, ones issued, it would be probably be impossible. And in the description, which I'll have to read again because it's early in the morning, I said, who said what? It's like that. Remember that Captain Sensible song? I said, Captain said what? Who said what? Who with some, and life during wartime. The surrealistic nightmare continues. Life has become a LARP, live action role playing game. One of the things people do when they get into these heavy subjects, they say this is just a LARP, a live action role playing game. But isn't it all a live action role playing game if you think about it? People talk about simulations, but in yesterday's rather, sermon on the web that I got into about that, I think I changed the title to an adverse adverse post, comments on an adverse post. I forget what it is. I'm not looking at it right now. I might still have it in my see if I deleted it from my. No, I've got my notification for today. Oh wait, here we go. No, I do. I have the original one, not the one that's changed. But it was basically, it was a post that set me off yesterday. And so I went on for 2 hour ramble about that. This is for the flat Earth people. These are actual photos. It's really like this up there. The only thing you don't realize here is that the space station is in low Earth, fairly low Earth or orbit. Okay, it's not really out in space, so to speak. But beyond and parallel to, etc. And I've shown this before in still pictures. There's so much space junk and so many satellites out there that it's unbelievable. But obviously, along the track that the space station is on, is clear. So we're not, so it doesn't bump into all this junk. But our planet from space is just surrounded by junk, and guys like Elon Musk are just sending up thousands of more pieces of junk. So that pretty blue marble that the kids, used to see in school or, in these various TV shows, it doesn't look like that at all. It just looks like some trash planet. It's like, it's like the oceans, where they've dumped garbage in, and they tell us to recycle, but what they really do is they take the stuff that they're supposedly that we're separating. And I've got a friend who she even cleans the plastic bottles out, or if we're drinking beer, she'll clean the beer can out, and they separate all this stuff, and the garbage trucks take and they put it in the same thing, and somehow somewhere along the line they just dump it in the oceans. It's all a LARP, right? Live action role playing game. There's this guy, Deese is his name, which was the inspiration for this show. Let me see if I put a new window up here, hopefully this doesn't cause any havoc, and see if I could find his name. Deese. Let's see. Yeah, that's him. All right. This guy, Steve Deese, apparently has some kind of radio show. Now, I think like I said, I don't want to get into politics because I'm done with politics. And I think he's one of those Blaze guys or something like that. But he has a book out where some expose of Fauci or something like that. And I just watched a clip right before I went to bed last night. And he was talking about this. He wanted to rush this book out because he's got all this, details. But and so I'm crediting in because, whenever somebody gives me, if there's an inspiration for a particular thing, I don't want to take credit for that. And I want to give proper credit where credit's due. But he raised some interesting points. I don't know if the book is good or not. I've never listened to his radio show. I don't subscribe to Blaze TV or any of that stuff. Like I say, that's more on the right side of things, and I'm no longer anything. Like I said, right wing, left wing, tail wing. I think I'm beyond the tail wing. I'm like I'm somewhere. I jumped off the bird, put it that way. Or I gave them all the bird. Because it's an exercise in futility. It's meaningless. We have irreconcilable differences, and when you reach that point, why bother? In any event, to make a long story longer, he was discussing, the state of things, and this ties into the title card with the gas mask on it, and the idea of is this a bioweapon? And he didn't come out and say that, but he was saying, that the question that's been on a lot of people's minds over the past well over a year now and even during the event 201, which research that on your own if you don't know what that is. I'm not going to get into that. That happened in 2019, in the early fall of 2019, prior to this thing that we know what we're talking about being released onto the world. And it was basically a dry run, um, you know, with all the players that are key players in it now, explaining and detailing what actions they would take, if such an event were to happen. And of course, within 30 days or less, or maybe at the same time, simultaneous to this, apparently was released. And the question that people have had along the way is that, I got a thing yesterday from my, now this thing's supposed to be 2 hours, and I don't, we'll see what happens here. Sleep hypnosis in space, I don't know. We'll see what that is. I'm playing some video in the background, and some of these things are supposed to be 2 hours. I try to pick things that are 2 hours long, so that if my videos usually are an hour to 2 hours. Mostly lately they've been 2 hours, but we'll see if this is. I don't know what this is, and well, be that as it may. But this seems to be something that we don't want to watch. So I'm going to take us out of here and try to take us back to what I'm dealing with is Amazon Prime. Some of these various videos that we've seen this one before. Let's start from the beginning. Let's see if this is videos. I probably should change the color, but I'm not. I apologize for this being kind of a slow talk show. Normally, if this would have been the case, I would have edited half of this stuff out, but I'm not going to. It's the morning show. It's Tony Caravan. It's 4:42 in the morning on the East Coast, and so be it. But what I was trying to get at is that, when you think about this thing, and this is all a LARP, live action role playing game now, a thought experiment. Okay, let's look at it that way. This is just something, a discussion, where I wouldn't even go as far to say that this is a hypothesis. This is just, just throwing stuff out there, contemplating, just messing around with ideas, possibilities that may be very remote. Okay. But just something to talk about. So when we think about these various plagues that have occurred, particularly within the last, say, century, because in many instances people have brought up, and I'll try to do it. The 1918 pandemic, for example. And that was the most severe pandemic in recent history. It was caused by the H1N1 virus. And of course, we know we've seen the H1N1 virus reemerge within the past decade. See, these viruses are around all the time. Although it's not universal consensus regarding the virus, it spread worldwide during 1918 and 1919. Okay. And they also used to called this the Spanish flu, but that wasn't really true because it actually, they believe it originated in the US. Now, that thing, the deaths estimates on that were 17 to 100 million. Okay. Those were the estimates. The suspected cases were 500 million. And then there's this other thing here, which I don't understand. The number of deaths were 50 million. So I guess they're taking their estimate, and this is some whatever, but 50 million, not 500,000, 600,000, 50 million. All right. And basically, this thing lasted about a year. Okay. Now, that was the H1N1. Like I say, and that thing's been around. Virologists have studied these things. It's a thought experiment. Okay. It's a live action role playing game. Let's not get too worked up now. Okay. We're just looking, we're looking at real life events, but we're going to get into, like I say, just a thought experiment, just ideas. So there was also a 1957 flu epidemic, which I guess I could look that up real quickly too. See, I just wing these shows. I'm unscripted. Everything's live. That's why it kind of starts out slow. 1957 pandemic. And that was an H2N2 virus that was in 57. And that the estimated number of deaths were over 1 million worldwide and 116,000 in the US. Well, someone will say, well, that's not bad. It's only 116. Well, you have to remember that the population of the US in 1957 was basically, right now it's 332 million. In the 70s, I believe it was like 200 some million. So going back 20 years from the 70s, since in the 20s it was 100 million, somewhere in between there, we're talking about just a little over a third, or like around a third of the population. So in 1957, that H2N2 pretty much killed percentage-wise about the exact same amount of people as this alleged, current one, which is a SARS based one. In fact, I'm going to do it. I should have done it. I'll be back in 10 seconds. We'll listen to we'll listen to nothing. I'll be right back. And he's back. I started to say earlier that, all your medical data, all your personal data is online. And I, as I mentioned yesterday in other shows, when I get these notifications from Google, I know that there is no such thing as privacy anymore. So I prefer to know what the information they have on me. So I'll always opt in to having, the information. So with my medical records, because I've had some medical procedures, I tend to look at that beautiful water out there. What a beautiful planet we live on. Yeah. I wish we were broadcasting live right from that spot. Yeah. But it's the beauty of the technology that we have today that, kind of in a way we are there. Well, anyway, I have one of these online things that's tied into my medical records. And so when I have doctor's appointments or I get blood tests or any of that kind of stuff, I'll get a notification, or I could log on to that site and I could see my test results. I could pre-register for the appointment so I don't have to go through all that nonsense, and any other notifications, I get. And yesterday I got a notification that about getting the old jab in the arm, that I could, should make an appointment. Now, I personally don't want to deal with that, and I hope we don't get into some kind of authoritarian state where they demand that people do that. I'm sorry that we have to look at these bird killers. But anyway, I had spoken to people who had seen this before. I had to go for a test, and at some point, and I might as well just put this on here so you can see. It's kind of cut off at the top, but at the top it says, this is a SARS. It's called, it looks like RS at the top, but I printed this out on my printer. You could also see the other thing, everything else is cut off along that line. But basically it's a SARS CoV2 RNA, right? That's what they test you for. That's what they call this, SARS CoV2. And of course, you could see on the bottom, it says not detected. And I had to do this because I had to have a tooth. I had to go to the dentist. And the dentist wasn't going to give me thing. So what we're experiencing, like I say, I always like to, I don't just talk off the cuff. I always credit whoever deserves to be credited. The morning show. So I tested negative, and that was a weird thing. That was, if you remember the movie, The Andromeda Strain, it's like these hazmat type suits and the way it would talk about surreal pulling up, because it's those, I don't know if they still do it that way, but it's like a drive-through thing, kind of. I had to get a friend to drive me. They drive you up, and then, and it was the one where they stuck it pretty well in. It wasn't as bad as the one that goes, I guess, all the way back to your throat. But they, they get these people that really, both nostrils digging in there. Not a pleasant experience, my friend. And I hope this thing isn't doing that weird clicking thing. What kind of technology do we have in the year 2021? I'm half awake. I need to wake up. I wonder if I should have taken a B12. I don't want to over-caffeinate myself. So, anyway, I tested negative, which I was surprised. I understand in many places people complain that they've kind of ratcheted up the level so that the test numbers, that you're likely, if you've had any corona, the common coronavirus, common human coronavirus, or SARS. Remember, SARS has been around since 2002, 2003, that era, maybe before that, but that's that. We see the H1N1 from 1918, H2N2 from 1957. And within the past 8 years or whenever it was under the last administration, not the administration before the last administration, Obama administration, they had one. There was like an H1N1 again, recurrence or something. I mean, that one didn't really kill that many people, tens of thousands, but the flu kills tens of thousands of people every year, upwards to 60,000 or whatever. But we don't know. But we don't know with that one that happened back then because they stopped counting and it wasn't like on the side of TV screens and stuff. And like I say, the one thing people don't understand. Oh, first of all, there's a lot of this LARP that we're in right now. There's a lot of things that you have to put into your mind. I'm trying to play around. The reason I brought up that guy in the first place, that Deese guy, Deese, however he pronounces his name, he said because he was talking about all these things, and he said, well, unless there's this other thing is possible, and that other thing that's possible is that people like me who don't want, who I don't want the jab, right? Because I just don't feel it's, in my personal viewpoint, I just don't feel there's been enough testing on it. Okay. And I don't like the idea that there's been some 2,700 deaths and some 30,000, very bad reactions to it. You could research those numbers. I don't know if they've taken them down now or not, but those were actual numbers. So there are some people who will die from that in the thousands, but that's not the reason. That's not the fear I would have, because, like I say, when you have 332 million people, in the thousands, tens of thousands, and even the hundreds of thousands is a fraction of 1%. It's actually a fraction of 1%. So, because a million is a fraction of 1%. 1 million people would be 1/3 of 1% of the U.S. population. Think about that. 1 million people is 1/3 of 1% of the population of the United States. So 500,000, all right, would be 1/6 of 1% of the population of the United States. So we're talking about, in other words, as I say often, 99 point, something percent, because I don't know the exact figures, survived, didn't die, won't die. And when you go back to 1919, which is funny how it's 100 years ago, I mean, that thing killed 50 million people, up some, the estimates are well over the place. And they say many people died because they were wearing masks because they had caught, some kind of thing. That's like, these are all little rabbit holes that people could go down. And I guess what this guy was trying to say is there's too many unanswered questions. And that's how I am. It's like, in other words, the reason I call this a LARP and, and this is just a discussion and a thought experiment and whatever you want to call it, is that, when I deal with reality, I'm going to show you reality. Yeah, I went and had my test. This is what they give you. It is SARS. Okay. They call it a novel this, novel that. I looked up the numbers. Those are from official government sites, what I just did a couple minutes ago. And the thing is, these things don't, like, nobody even remembers that about the same percentage-wise, about the same amount of people caught and died from the 1957 pandemic, U.S. pandemic, And nobody remembers it. Nobody even remembers it. And nobody was wearing masks in the US. And it just went away after that year. It just went away. And even the one that, that we talk about, the mother of all pandemics, the 1918, 1919, whatever, that came and went. And that was the one that killed like 50 million people or something like that. Well, this thing has -19 on it, at least in the public records. But, when you take the test, they just call it Sars CoV2. Okay. I mean, this is the official thing. I mean, I printed this out because I wanted the hard copy for the dentist, even though he got a notification apparently because he has access to my public my records, my medical records online, like anybody else does and any hacker, Google does, the government does, anyone who thinks, well, I'm going to opt out of that. There's no privacy anymore. So this is a rather long way of getting around to the point of there's just too many questions that aren't being answered and haven't been answered over the past year and a half. So this thing is basically lasting longer than what we would call the worst pandemic in history that we know of. I mean, except the original plague, the European plague, of the in the dark ages, so to speak. Though that probably killed less people all told, and percentage-wise way less because the world population at that point was so low. You always have to put all these things into perspective. And so what I'm getting at is that for this thing to not behave, it's quite possible in this thought experiment, right? This live action role-playing game that we're embarking on. Yeah, it's quite possible that, them using this word novel, which, man, that doesn't rest too well with me. I don't like people that always have some kind of comeback that isn't based in fact, In other words, people that twist words, use words for this, just for the simple-minded people that accept that, right? And don't question it. Novel how? Novel why? Right? I mean, it is SARS after all. Okay. Why is it more novel than SARS 1? Oh, it's catchier. That's like what my doctor said. It's catchy. It's very catchy. Yeah, that's the coronavirus part of it. Coronavirus is catchy. That's the common cold aspect of it. See, the common cold is like coronavirus. That's why there's no vaccine for the common cold. Like, I don't even know if they'll keep this video up because, you mentioned certain words and I think they have them flagged or something like that. But, like I said, we're just questioning. This is just a thought experiment. We're just asking questions. We're not making any decisions here. Not telling anybody to do or not do or what is or what isn't. I'm just looking at the facts as we know them firsthand. Like I always say, firsthand experience, factual information from specific government websites. No hearsay, right? No secondhand information. I don't believe in secondhand information. So I guess what I'm trying to get at, and what was, got my mind thinking last night before I went to bed. I didn't sleep well last night either. That's why I'm up so early. still 5. It's like 5 a.m. I should be just waking up now. So I guess what the question is that is in a lot of people's minds who are looking at this in a sense beyond the point of just accepting, the ever-changing narrative. Excuse me. Because that's the other thing. If the narrative wouldn't change all the time, if the so-called people in charge wouldn't constantly be giving us a different story, and I understand, like in I don't know which state it was, or if it's nationwide now, or if it came from the CDC or not, but that was because it was impossible for some school system, it was impractical to have the children sitting 6 feet apart. They changed the guidance. That's an interesting word they use, this guidance, CDC guidance, or, Institute of Health guidance, WHO's guidance. And we'll get into the WHO in a second. I want to forget that, because that's got everybody in an uproar now, because now they're starting to seem to be doing their work, and they're following the same line of thought as I'm about to talk about. But this guidance had changed from 6 feet of separation to 3 feet, because that was something more doable within the school classrooms. And so when you when you come out with a statement and say, well, you need to be 6 feet apart, and then you say, and then there's a backlash or something from, some administrators or bureaucrats, and then you change your guidance to say, well, actually, we found out now that it's really only need to be 3 feet apart. And that happens to coincide with some sort of policy change. It's another question that comes up. Well, was it 6 feet? What were you basing your original 6 feet on? I mean, you can't be that inept. I mean, and if so, then all of these people from Fauci on down should have been fired long ago. Remember, Fauci was the guy who said you don't have to wear a mask and that this will probably be nothing, right? And then, you don't have to, if you social distance, you don't need a mask. Or if you can't social distance, then wear a mask. Then it was 2 masks? And then it's like 6 feet, 3 feet, And then these guys, like the CDC is a 501c3 organization. Did you know that? It's not the government. And Bill Gates, it's funded by these various foundations. And remember what a lot of these foundations are. They're money laundering schemes, because they have interest. In other words, through the foundation, they raise money or put their money in. It's tax deductible, so they don't have to pay taxes. But then that foundation gives money to this 501c3, and because they've donated, they have an influence on the 501c3 to how they spend that money. And so in effect, that money is spent on, say, a vaccine, which Gates, Fauci, and have financial interest in. So they profit. So in other words, it's a game. See, it's a corporatocracy puppeteer game. And then these people look like, oh, we're donating, our wealth to charity or to these things. But in reality, it's just a it's just basically masking money laundering scheme. And then people think, oh, CDC, it's the government. But it's not. It's just a 501c3 organization. Now, government taxpayer money ends up channeling into that as well. But it's it's just a corporation. It's just a nonprofit corporation that makes these declarations and directives and gives guidance. That's directed by billionaires, very wealthy people. A lot of people don't know that. That's not talked about, but you could, look it up. The people who want to go beyond the memes and the headlines and the posts and people don't understand why I stopped Twitter and things like that. It's like, because no one wanted to go. And the reason why, nobody watches my videos, I guess. Because people don't want the long form answers. They literally don't want to know the truth. It's like I ended up saying yesterday, it's like, first it was a tax farm, then it's a tax/consumer farm. But now it's almost like it's a circus horror show, or a house of fun in the scary sense, right? The horror house of horrors. That's what it is, right? The U.S. has become a house of horrors, publicly, the media, house of horrors. Forget about the thing I play every day.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Well, we're long beyond that point. We're long gone beyond that. They've got people scared to death. Yeah, welcome to the house of fun, as house of horrors, right? But nobody knows anything. So, the WHO, W.H.O, World Health Organization, which is, has been embroiled in controversy over the past couple of years because of their not holding China, accountable. Well, somewhere along the line, there have been some changes here and there. And recently they came out and they said, we can't, they're looking at trying, they still, there's not a concrete answer. Like, there's some people out there, if you watch a certain channels or so, they'll say, oh, this thing came from bats or at a fish market or something like that. I mean, and they say it with such certainty and absoluteness that there are literally leagues of people believing this. But recently, very recently, the WHO came out and said, we can't outrule, because they realize that evidence is coming out. They go, we can't rule out the idea that this actually came from a virology lab in Wuhan. Now, we've known that, those of us who have insiders, so to speak, who, know where to look and, who to talk to, have kind of known that for, well over a year now. It's not really a mystery. This didn't come out of a fish market. Oh God. The things people believe. So anyway, so now the US bureaucrats and other former Western civilization bureaucrats are up in arms with the WHO. How dare you even suggest that this possibly is a came out of a bioweapons lab, because that's what that place is, you know. And instead of there being, you know, here's the other thing, you know, say it didn't even, the idea that this, we, you know, people know of like Fort Detrick and different places like that. But the idea that out of this whole LARP, you know, the surrealistic nightmare we've been living for the past 2 years. It's been 2 years, you know, if you really think about it, it's coming up on 2 years. Since the planning stages of Event 201, right? And the transferal of material, you know, from the US to China and back and forth. And there was a Canadian arrested. You know, there's a whole other weird little thing in this LARP that we're talking about here, you know, that's like right out of, you know, one of these apocalyptic, you know, Walking Dead type of scenarios. You know, a lot of information has come out. And the thing is, it doesn't really matter, and it shouldn't, well, it should matter, but I mean, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But the fact that we've opened our eyes that these bioweapons labs exist, right? See, no one's in denial of that. The government's not denying that. All right. You know, oh, we're studying it so that we could come up. We have these places so that we can react to potential, you know, whatever. But the fact is, they're experimenting with these things. They're creating bioweapons, right? You know, it's like any other arms race, right? I remember I trying to explain the Apollo program. Not only does it have that aspect of Apollo being the sun god, and part of it was to verify that the sun might have these micronovas, and that, you know, within the next 25 years, we could all be screwed, which, you know, go to Ben Davidson Suspicious Observers site and get into that, or Doug Vogt, you know, watch his videos, get his books, and, you know, whatever. Talked about those guys before. And I mentioned them in my book too, by the way. If I can reach it. You know, this is a book of questions. This is a book that raises questions, you know, more so than answers. It's not a big read. It's my latest book, Codex. The character there. Yeah, I'm a character. I realize that. But I've had a good life, and life is still good. So, but you don't see anybody outraged and saying, hey, with the protest signs, you know, magic marker on a piece of cardboard box, Amazon box, Walmart box, cut up box and a stick, you know, close down bioweapon labs, stop experimenting with deadly viruses, right? You know, where's the anti-nukes? No nukes. Hey, Jackson Brown, you know, no nukes now. You know, there's more nukes. They're making they've got a whole new round of nuclear weapons out there now. You know, they're developing, replenishing, fixing, adding new warheads to, you know, replacing old warheads with new warheads. Right? Where's that? Instead, they're saying, oh, we need the Green New Deal. Well, I'll tell you, we don't need no Green New Deal, man. We need to get rid of bioweapons, bioweapon labs, and we need no nukes now, you know, as in nuclear weapons. These are the biggest threats to mankind, not 0.004 CO2. That's only going to green the planet more, help us with crops and ultimately give us more food and oxygen, because the planet's clearly cooling. I mean, despite whatever, if go to David Dubine's site, Adapt 2030, watch his video from yesterday and watch the charts and news reports, some of the stuff. I mean, the videos are short. And you just, just to get an eye opener on how far behind the average person is on what reality is. And the same with Suspicious Observers, Davidson, and he's got a book out, I mean, these are science. These are people that follow the science, read the report, the reports, the people publishing peer-reviewed papers. I don't know. I'm in kind of a half jovial, half awake mode right now, but it's interesting, because my personality changes. Yesterday was like this somber thing, into the microphone. Other times there's been different things. Today I guess I'm trying to be somewhat lighthearted about us, but it's a serious issue. I'm not taking this, lightly, at all. No, not at all. So that's the question that and why I have that title card there. Is it a bioweapon? Because, and if so, let us know, because then I will get the jab. You see? Then this experimental thing that they're not talking about, might be worth it. Because it's not acting like H1N1, H2N2, SARS-1, or what you would consider SARS-2 to be, or your standard coronavirus, CoV. And just saying, oh, it's a novel thing. There was a thing in Bloomberg yesterday, we have to prepare that this pandemic might last forever, or something like that was the headline on Bloomberg. And for these control freaks and that, they love that, because then they could have these passports. That's the newest thing that they're doing. So they want you to get the jib jab, but it's not that you have the jib jab in your arm, because they're saying, oh, even with the jab, you still wear a face mask and social distance. It's like, what? Say what? I mean, shouldn't that mean it's like it's over? And like these other things, when they didn't do any of this stuff, I don't care, novel or not, it's still official that the 1918-19 pandemic was killed millions upon millions of people and was the worst pandemic ever that that we know of, at least our civilization. And that just ended. They didn't do any of this stuff. There was mask wearing. All right. But I mean, in a very primitive way. I mean, most people didn't wear masks and stuff. And the thing was done. It was gone. Like I say, in 1957, this whole thing happened again. And percentage-wise, when you look at the population in the U.S., it was about the same. But there was nobody even knew about. Like, if you ask, I asked my 87-year-old mother, and she didn't even heard of it. You ask people around, they're like, what? They don't even know about it. It was no thing. It wasn't like they didn't, social distance or whatever, and it went away. And so why isn't this, so what's so different about this? Oh, it's novel. Well, by novel, what do you mean? Do you mean this is a bioweapon? Did China release a bioweapon on the United States, on the world? because it was under pressure, and the Communist Chinese Party, wasn't reaching its plan. That was when their Congress met. You know how they have their 50-year plan of world global domination and the Silk Road. And was the U.S. had taken, they were supposed to become the number one power in 2019. And that was thwarted, and the U.S. remained at the top at that point. And so did they release this to basically, stop that? I don't know. I'm not saying that that's true. But nobody's saying it's not true. They're not explaining what they mean. And it looks to me that if this thing is reacting differently, then it seems as if, like, you can't rule out that it was messed with genetically. This whole RNA. You see the word RNA on there up top? And these vaccines are RNA. It's not like the measles thing where you get a little bit of the measles in your arm. And that way your body, since you had a little bit of it, your body starts to fight it and creates antibodies or whatever the heck it is that fights the measles, so that if you're exposed to the measles, now your body already has a defense against it, so you don't get the measles, right? Mumps. What do they have? The MMR virus, measles, mumps, rubella, or something like that. That's like a shot that kids get. And so it contains those things. So the body this thing doesn't work like that. You don't get a shot. You don't get a bit of, you don't get SARS CoV2 put in your arm. All right. Instead, this is some kind of thing that it's like an RNA thing that messes on a, basically a genetic level, build some kind of protein that's like a mold. Like, I guess the best way to describe it is if you had, in fact, let me see if I can get this here. I don't want to make a mess and just totally destroy. It's not there. Where is that? Excuse me while I get off camera here. Let's see if this stuff, I think this stuff might have dried out. I haven't. This is silly putty. Grown man playing with silly putty. Let me just hold it up to the camera, right? Looks like chewing gum, but, it's basically, comes in this thing. You know what I'm talking about. Most people know what silly putty is. Well, anyway, what happens is this stuff is dried out. I'm trying to loosen it up to give you an example. The way this has been explained to me by doctors is that what this jab does is put something like this in your body. And then it creates a protein that somehow molds All right. See, if you look at this through the light, see if we can get it there. Well, there's some printing on that. Now look what happened. You see where it says the word lens? Well, that's like what the edge of this is. And you've all seen these pictures of this thing, this virus thing. You know, it's got those little spikes on it. And so what happens is that it builds some kind of protein or deals with something. I'm not a virologist. I'm just trying to a layman explain what I've seen and been told. So it's kind of like a silly putty thing. It makes a mold of that thing. So when something with that, you know, those spikes or whatever comes into the body, then it's going to somehow attack it, you know. And that's their whole idea. And it's also been explained to me is that a lot of these things, the reason these things came out so quick wasn't that it took long to develop this. In fact, this is the scary part. This is why I don't do. I'm going to show you this. This is just a bigger view of my room. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Lenses. I've got all kinds of things like that. So, and that's it. That this thing was like they pretty much figured this thing out in almost like a couple of weekends. You know, and it was the approval process and the testing, you know, process. And some of these, I think there were 30,000 people that were in one of the test groups or something like that. But they don't talk about, you know, those that have died. You know, there have been a couple thousand people who have died from it. And there have been some big numbers of people that have had serious reactions to it. And so all I'm asking is that's fine and dandy. You know, if there's a risk, if this is indeed, was this a bioweapon? Okay. Is there evidence there? The strong reaction by these bureaucrats and these people, the corporatocracy against the WHO, just even having the door open to that possibility, because that's all they did. They didn't come out and say that. They said, you know, it's possible that this could have come from this lab, which is a bioweapons lab. Okay. It's all right. And the fact that this has been floating around in serious circles, you know, for well over a year now, and in tandem with the very coincidental Event 201 and the planning stages leading up to that, okay, that this thing is, you know, so we're talking about something that's 2 years old, you know, more or less. And that it's not behaving like any other thing that has ever come before. That just throwing out the word, oh, well, this is novel. Well, that's completely unacceptable. You know. It's also unacceptable that, you know, somebody dies of a motorcycle accident and they're, you know, they're listed as they died of this thing, the plague. Or that the average death age person who dies from this thing is in the US is something like around 77, 78 or something like that, which happens to be the average age of death, a natural average age of death in the US. And so, and the idea that there's a financial incentive for hospitals to put down COVID as the primary cause because they get what, $8,000 or something like that, or some kind of payment. So, like, all these questions that you would expect the media to be asking are just not being asked. And what I'm saying is that, give us the truth, or, or ask these questions. Isn't that the job of media? The job of the media isn't to scare people, isn't to post some kind of like big numbers up there and make those numbers seem like, oh my God. When in reality, we know more people die from cancer every year than have died from this thing. As many or more die from heart disease than have died from this thing every year, not just this, not in one calendar year. And that this thing is going now beyond, the duration, the biological, logical expectation of how long a thing can last. These viruses just don't last that long. That's why there's a flu shot every year. I mean, this is a flu. It's a SARS, but you know what I mean. We call it novel all you want, but the reason there's a different flu shot every year, or you get a flu shot once, okay, you're good for 5 years, you're good for 10 years, like a tetanus shot or something. The reason that doesn't happen with these kinds of things is because they constantly mutate and change. They just don't last, right? But they're all the H1N1, H2N2, SARS. They know what they are. They're all in this world. And the virologists know this, and the Faucis, they know this. That's what they do, for crying out loud. They've allegedly, supposedly, become millionaires. They spend their whole lives doing this stuff, studying this stuff. And it's like they never talk that way. It's like they treat the American people like children. And the American people are children. And we have a Peter Pan culture today. So everyone's just frightened. The director of the CDC came out yesterday or the day before and said that she's scared to death or something. Like, it was a ridiculous thing for some person, a public figure, to do that. What a contrast of her and...
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
To Roosevelt, who was, an extreme progressive on the left, some called him a communist. My grandfather used to call him a communist. But that, see, this is why politics is so and why this is theater of the absurd and a surrealistic nightmare. And like I say, it's a live action role playing game, because you don't know what's going on. It's a house of horrors. And they say, well, and there's always somebody wants to come out, and then they'll throw some words out and say, well, yeah, but this, that, and look at these numbers. And it's like, yeah, but where'd you get those numbers from? Well, the CDC said, a 501c3 organization that takes money from foundations that basically profit on vaccines, that the testing, that there's a whole industry has popped up in the past year that's a 90 billion, probably $100 billion a year industry in testing for this. Now, when you have $100 billion industry, or say not, it's because I think it was 91. The exact number was 91, but you know how these things are. Everybody's jumping in. I heard there's over 100 different companies now that have jumped into this testing business, which makes you question the test itself. It's like, shouldn't there just be one official test, right? So our numbers can be, qualified and quantified, on the same standards. Like in the scientific world, we want to reproduce in order to prove something in science. We want to take the exact same, we want to be able to duplicate that experiment or the results in the exact manner, right? In another lab, maybe in another part of the world. And we want to do that several times, right? So that then we can say, never with a complete certainty, but with a high probability of certainty, that yes, that is the case, right? But when you've got 100 different tests, companies involved in $100 billion industry that's risen up, right? Multiple vaccines, different people saying different things, National Institute of Health, CDC, FDA, W.H.O, and then various bureaucrats, arguing among each other, and state, health authorities having different, guidance themselves, that you have to say, wait, what's going on here, man? And then not to mention the whole concept of bioweapons and bioweapons labs that should be the front page news, the headline. Why do we have these things? Where's the effort, to get rid of them? Maybe it accidentally leaked out. That's one of the possibilities that some people propose. Okay, yeah, it leaked out. But that means we need to close those labs. If they're secured, if this type of thing can happen. And then let us know that. And then if you want to assure people will take the jab, right? Then tell them that. Say, hey, this is what happened. This was basically messed with. This was a virus messed with, a bioweapon that was messed with because they were trying to find, a cure, or in case this would be released, that they were working on that. That's what people do. It's like war games, right? In war games, they constantly propose these worst case scenarios, and the people involved in the war games come up with solutions for that, right? Contingencies for contingencies for contingencies. No, that's how that works. That's the reality of the world. But see, this is an adult conversation. They don't treat the American people or anybody anymore like adults. They treat everybody like children, and they just throw out a word and they scare them. They say, oh, they give a one-word answer. Oh, well, this is novel. I can't believe it. A friend of mine said that to me like 6 months ago or something. Well, it's novel. I'm like, what do you mean it's novel? You mean like it's a book novel? It's novel. Okay, how? Novel how? Right? Like that Joe Pesci thing. Funny how? Right? Like I amuse you? Yeah. So, there's a lot of questions out there, and nobody's given any real answers. And if they really wanted people to follow, get in lockstep and follow their authoritarian, dictates, maybe they have to realize that the people who aren't really just stepping in line right now are the people that have a lot of questions. So answer those questions. These people are, after all, the people who are supposedly, allegedly in charge of these organizations are the leading virologist or leading scientist or leading biologist, microbiologist, geneticists, whatever, in their fields. They know how they could explain that. People, America is a highly educated country, and there are also ways to explain things to a non-scientific mind quite easily, like I did. Just take out the silly putty, or something like that, and use an analogy. They're not doing that. And that raises even more questions. Why aren't you doing that? Like I said before, it's like hygiene, washing your hands and all that stuff. That's common sense. We know about that. Most people know that. Those that don't are going to get sick anyway. Those people are going to get sick and die of something no matter what. Right? That's why I say that most of the deaths that they've had, people have had, have died of something else or had what they call pre-existing conditions. That in Pennsylvania, they have a phase 1 group that it's like people over 75 or people who have some like pre-existing conditions or something like that, who have some kind of threat. I'm just looking at that. So, that's the thing. That's the takeaway, as I basically, I've woken up more with this caffeine. People want to know. People want to know the truth, and we don't know the truth about anything. We're just, we're entering into this, this surrealistic nightmare is just becoming more and more crazy, more and more like nightmarish. It's a house of horrors, is what it is. And this idea of Bloomberg talking about this being never ending, like I say, and it's already surpassed its natural order of things. It's like it pretty much should be over now. We should be into something different, And then this idea of like what I talked about yesterday is these people forgetting that people do get sick of the flu and die, so that why don't they fess up to that instead of everything is this, everything's that. And then these grown adults forget that they were sick as a child or even as an adult. They forget that they had the flu 7 years ago, right? Or 15 years ago, and were so-called deathly ill and couldn't get out of bed, had to take off work, or if they were younger, didn't go to school for several days or whatever, or a week. Because that's what happens. There's bugs out there. You get sick sometimes, And when you have 332 million people, hundreds of thousands of them get sick, And that's basically 1/6 of 1% of the population. And it needs to be presented that way. You need to say 99+% of the US population did not die and will not die from this. 99+% did not and will not. That's a fact. That's not, But the numbers, yeah. Well, if you want to play the numbers game, more people die every year from cancer, more people die from heart disease and heart-related diseases. And I don't see anybody doing anything about that. I don't see the FDA, restricting people from eating foods that are causing heart disease. I don't see the FDA, right, taking those weed killers and these other carcinogens, these products that contain actual carcinogens off the market. They're still for sale, but the lawyers are still suing. So they've proven in court, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that these things have caused cancer. But they still sell them because the corporatocracy is making money on them, or big pharma is making money by selling drugs to treat these things rather than to cure them, right? Or to end, the sale of various products, foods, products, pharmaceuticals that are causing these problems. And then let's not forget the other elephant in the room, that there are actual cures out there right now, treatments. Some people call them cures because they have cured people, but at the very least, they're treatments. And so when you have a treatment for a thing, it's usually not considered an epidemic or a pandemic anymore, right? So that's another question. It's, so we're being lied to. We're being deceived. The media is failing us. The people, the organizations that people are looking up to are failing us. And this has nothing to do with politics, because this whole thing has happened now through 2 administrations. So it has nothing to do with politics. Who cares? You know what I mean? Who cares who was what? People want to get caught up in that and play that game. It doesn't matter. The corporatocracy is still pulling, the strings. Why is that Fauci guy still in there? Right? But he was still in there the last time. What's going on, man? See, if you can't see the writing on the wall, I feel sorry for you. So yeah, I'm not going to take no jab in the arm until I get some answers. I want to know the truth. I don't care what it is. Or I want you to at least say to me, admit, fess up, like the WHO recently did and said, yeah, we can't rule out the possibility that this came out of that virology bioweapons lab. And this whole idea of it being novel, someone needs to expound on that term. You mean novel as in it may have been messed with in a bioweapons lab? What do you mean by novel? And why is this not acting like, isn't it over? And why don't you tell the American people, why you keep using big numbers instead of the percentages? Figures lie and liars figure. That's why. You don't want to tell people that. You don't want to tell people that, 99+ percent of the people didn't die from it. What about the 1957? And the 1918 or 1919? Those things just ran its course. Why hasn't this run its course? It's over. I mean, it's time. Its life expectancy has expired by all rules of virology, you say. See, even a layman, even someone who just studies, reads some books, will go, yeah, well, this thing's, it's already run its course. And the idea that they're talking, that you've got 100 million people who've already been inoculated or something like that. They're talking about within the next month, maybe 200 million, 2/3 of the population. The other people have either already had it and should have an immunity to it, right? I mean, there's certain people that just don't get the flu no matter what it is. If you go back to 1918, the worst one ever, the one that killed 50 million to 100 million people or something like that, or even 1957, the one that killed the similar amount, which probably killed more percentage wise than this thing did because they fudged the numbers. That's clear. Even the CDC website was, that was a game they were playing, I don't know, 6-8 months ago when they posted, and then I think they removed it, but it may still be up if you could find the page. Use that Wayback Machine, if you use that they had shown that the actual death tolls were something like 1/6 or something of what was being posted on the news media sides of all the TV stations. The actual COVID deaths were inflated. So, it's just kind of, it's really, it's surreal. It's weird. It's really weird. Google Play apps. So I don't know, where we go from here, is interesting. And, you just have to, we're living in this live action role playing game, and the people in charge, the players, we're not the players. We're like, we're the pieces, we're just the little markers, the little game pieces. It's a live action role playing game, and these corporatocracy Davos people are playing the game, and they're just moving us around the board, telling us, and forcing us to do whatever we want to, sacrificing the pawns, right? That kind of thing. Or the old cattle on a tax farm, consumer farm, house of horrors now, right? Be afraid. It's like in the 1950s, The Blob, right? All those movies they had. It's like they treat this like that person I talked about yesterday, that in the show who had that post. It's like they treat it like it's a flesh-eating disease, like it's Ebola or something. Like that's the level of fear people have. You see it if you go out, right? You see people in their cars, people driving alone in a car wearing a mask. You figure that out, their own car, alone, and they're wearing a mask. To them, it's a flesh-eating disease. It's Ebola. Pardon me. I don't want to sneeze. Because that's the only reason you would act the way people are reacting. I mean, I certainly would. I wouldn't even leave my house, and there's people won't even leave their house. And I certainly wouldn't wear 2 masks, but I guess I would wear 2 masks if I thought it was a flesh-eating disease. But like I say, I don't know. I go out all the time. I tested negative. I'm lucky in the area where I live. I have good doctors. There's like a good medical community here. And you don't have that in a lot of places. In other words, the testing people were, accurate testing. The surgeons are serious people. That's not just like, all right, rolling the gurney. Let's take care of this. Roll them out. Right. No, you know, they're in there. They're in there. They're committed. And, I'm fortunate, to be in that kind of area. But most people aren't. And most people are out there and they're just watching these, like I said, I cut the cord to TV. They're watching this stuff on TV and they're scared to death. They think it's a flesh-eating Ebola disease or something. They don't know. They're not even they don't want answers. It never even crosses their mind to even ask a question. And then the press won't ask any questions to these people. Right? Why is that? So we don't have a press anymore. We just have a corporatocracy with a public relations wing, PR wing, propagandist. We don't have an education system anymore. We have like an indoctrination system, bunch of administrators. And now what I'm seeing is a bunch of teachers that don't really, they're just putting in time till they can retire, get their pension or whatever the hell, stick with the union so you can get a raise or something. Don't care about any of that stuff. Like I say, in one regard, I don't blame people who are stuck in situations where they've got to support a family. And so they don't want to rock the boat or lose their job because they, potentially could be out on the street. But I have to say, with all honesty, throughout my life, I never played that game. I was never once fired from a job. I've had dozens of jobs, and I've had my own businesses too. I'm older now. I may not look as old as I even am, but I'm old. I'm retired. I quit jobs. I went in and I quit on principle. Somebody said something, I learned something about somebody, or I didn't like this policy or this thing. I said, take this job and shove it. Like the Johnny Paycheck type of thing. Walked right out the door. It's like that poem, If, people should read that poem, If. Let's see if I could bring that up. If. Got to put Rudyard in there. Let's just look at if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your long after they're gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk to crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose your common touch, If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth the distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. You know, people used to memorize that poem. Like I said, I was never a big memorizer, but I more look into the words and like into thinking it. Risk it all. You know, stand up for your rights, be a man, you know, or a woe man, you know, or whatever you call yourself. But yeah, people are just they're behaving like children. Peter Pan society, fear, house of horrors. You know, the former United States of America has become the house of horrors. It's like people used to refer to the US as Disneyland, right? And it, in one way, it was true, you know, because it was all just one big Disney park. But not so much anymore. It's more, like I say, we're pretty much cattle on a tax farm. It's pathetic. And nobody seems to care. They don't care. They just like ride their lawnmowers on the weekend, buy their stupid, idiotic, bright and shiny objects. You know, it's insanity, really, if you think about it. It's total insanity. Anyway.
Same time, same station.
I'll be here, same time, same station. Good morning. Have a good morning. I think I'll end it there. Beautiful waterfall in the background. Tony Caravan. It's the morning show. Hit the show more. There's some links. There's a link to my website. Get a mug, get a shirt, get a book. I'm not monetized. Someday you'll realize that what I'm saying is true. People like me will be quoted. And that's not an ego trip. It's just based on reality. First hand knowledge. Not hearsay, not media, not some talking head, bureaucrat, foundational money laundering, you know, con artist. And that's what we're being exposed to right now. Have a great day. Sorry, some of these things are downers, you know. I mean, but it's just something to talk about, you know. Nobody else is talking about this stuff. You know, if it gets your mind thinking, I've succeeded. I don't care if you like me or not, you know. I've just finished watching I mean, this thing's over. You could turn it off. I just finished watching that Black Lightning show I referred to in yesterday's video, binge watching. It ended. It's over. And I've been looking around and it's like nothing else to watch. So it's like, I'll watch my own video. That's why I make these things 2 hours long, because I watch them later on. I enjoy them. I like watching my own thought process come through these because they're not scripted, you know. That's why I get up and go grab something off the wall or do something weird like that, because, you know, it's like, I wasn't thinking I was going to pull silly putty out. I thought it was over there. It's over there. I knew I had some. But anyway, honesty is the best policy. Truth. The search for truth and beauty. It's a beautiful world we live on. Know that. Remember the 5 senses. That's your purpose in life, to experience life, live well. Remember, don't just survive, thrive, and forget about protest and signs and all that kind of stuff. Living well is the best revenge. Forget about politics, politicians, cut the cord, just live life, enjoy. You know, I'm having a time of my life. I mean, I got to get through the next couple days of this cold weather because I really want to go outside and mess with my garden and lay in the sun and get a suntan. I mean, that's what I want most of all. But, you know, I got to be patient. Take care. I'll talk to you tomorrow.